My husband said, my ex is just crashing on our couch, it's totally harmless. I said, okay. Then I moved my ex onto the couch too. Mark and I had been married for 3 years when his ex landed on our couch and decided to stay. Sloane texted him out of nowhere, said her lease had fallen through, and by the time I got home from work she was already unpacking a duffel bag in my living room. It's just for a couple of weeks, Mark told me in the kitchen. She has nowhere else to go right now. We are way past all that ancient history, so please don't make it weird. I asked why he had not called me first. Because I knew you would overthink it. She is basically my sister at this point. Relax. I said the couch was a strange landing spot for an ex. You are being so insecure. It is a couch, not a honeymoon suite. Be a decent human being for once. So I let it go. By the second night, Sloane had reorganized my spice rack and announced that my coffee maker was doing it wrong. When I asked Mark to maybe pick a date for her to move out, he looked at me like I had suggested leaving a kitten on the highway. She is family. You do not put a timer on family. So I let that go too. A couple of weeks slid into a routine. Every single night, Mark and Sloane parked themselves on the couch under the same blanket and worked through every movie they used to love, the ones stuffed with inside jokes I was never part of. They ordered the takeout they used to order back then. Sloane started wandering my house in his old hoodie and calling the throw pillows hers. Babe, are you coming to bed? I would ask near midnight. In a bit. We are almost through this one. I went to bed alone more nights than not, listening to the pair of them laugh through the wall. When I admitted that it stung, Mark sighed like I was the unreasonable one in the house. She is going through a hard time and you are making it about yourself. It is literally just movies. Sloane chimed in from the couch without looking up. Yeah, we are just friends. I knew him way before you ever did. That weekend, Mark canceled our dinner plans because Sloane was feeling fragile and wanted company. The two of them claimed a regular order at the diner they used to haunt, and he came home raving about how nobody got his humor the way she did. When I said I felt like a guest in my own marriage, he told me I was keeping score. That was the night I decided to even it up. So I called Danny. Danny was my ex from the years before Mark, a sweet, deeply dull man who had just been voted off his roommate's couch and out into the cold world. Hey, do you still need somewhere to crash for a bit? Are you serious? Yes, I will even bring my own pillow. Bring it tonight. Turns out there is room on the couch. Danny arrived that evening and claimed the empty end of the couch like he had been born on it. Within a day, he had proven the least threatening house guest in recorded history, snoring like a riding mower, killing an entire box of cereal before noon, and narrating his fantasy football lineup to anybody within earshot. That first night, I dropped onto the cushion between everyone with a bowl of popcorn and started a movie. Babe, Mark said, his voice winching tight. Who exactly is this? Danny, my ex. He is going through a hard time and has nowhere to go. We are way past all that ancient history. Danny lifted a hand without pausing his chewing. She knew me before she knew you, he offered, trying to be helpful. Mark steered me into the kitchen at speed. You cannot just move your ex into our house. Funny, I said. That is the opposite of what you told me 3 weeks ago. That is completely different. Sloane actually needed the help. So does Danny. He brought his own pillow and everything. I am not comfortable with another man sleeping 10 feet from our bedroom. Neither was I said. You told me to be a decent human being about it. Mark could not hold still after that. He started hovering in the living room every night, tracking Danny the way a hawk tracks a very slow, very harmless pigeon. Still, he tried telling me Danny was clearly taking advantage, that a real friend would never impose like this, that I was too naive to see it. Every word out of his mouth was a line I had heard him wave away a month earlier. You sound exactly like the insecure person you swore I was, I reminded him. That is not the same, he started, and then could not finish, because it was precisely the same. Sloane, meanwhile, suddenly grew very interested in apartment listings now that her end of the couch had company. The inside jokes dried up fast once there was a second ex laughing at a second set of them. She started spending her evenings in the guest room with the door shut, complaining that the living room had gotten too loud. Mark, who had defended movie night to my face for a month, abruptly decided movie night was over. It was amazing to watch their paradise break down. Mark started setting his alarm 15 minutes before Danny usually got up. I only figured it out because I heard his phone buzz at 6:45 one morning, way earlier than he ever woke up on his own, and by the time Danny shuffled into the kitchen rubbing his eyes, Mark was already there, leaning against the counter, arms crossed, coffee already made, keeping an eye on things like Danny was going to steal the silverware or raid the fridge in some kind of dangerous cereal heist. And then there was the mug thing. We had a whole cabinet of normal mugs, the regular kind you drink coffee out of like a regular person. But every single morning, Mark poured Danny's coffee into this tiny little mug we got as a free gift from some insurance company years ago. The thing barely held 4 ounces. It was the kind of mug you would give a doll if a doll drank coffee. Mark would slide it across the counter with this fake helpful smile, and Danny would just pick it up and drink from it because Danny did not care about mugs or power moves or whatever was happening inside Mark's head. Mark thought he was being slick about it. He thought nobody noticed. I noticed every single time. I stood there sipping from my own normal adult-sized mug and watched my husband wage a tiny war against a man who did not even know he was on a battlefield. One morning, Danny caught me in the hallway before I left for work. He had the little insurance mug in his hand, half empty already because of course it was, and he looked genuinely confused. Hey, is Mark okay? He keeps staring at me like I owe him money. I told him not to worry about it. Danny shrugged in that easy way he had, the kind of shrug that said nothing in the world bothered him enough to think about it twice. He looked down at the tiny mug, took another sip, and said, cool. Also, your husband's ex ate my cereal again. It was the most low-stakes conflict in the house and somehow the only honest one. That evening, Mark pulled me into the bedroom and shut the door behind us. This has gone on long enough. Danny needs to go. I looked at him for a second, letting the words just sit there in the air between us. Then I asked the only question that mattered. When is Sloan leaving? His jaw tightened. That is not what we are talking about right now. It is exactly what we are talking about, I said. Same situation, same couch, same rules. Unless you want to explain why your ex gets a different set. He stood there running through every possible answer in his head, testing each one to see if it would hold up, and every single one crumbled before it got to his mouth. So he did what he always did when I backed him into a corner with his own words. He walked away, did not argue, did not explain, just turned around, opened the door, and left the room like the conversation had never happened. Later that same night, Sloan caught me in the hallway outside the bathroom. She had been waiting there, I could tell, because she stepped out the second I came around the corner. Her arms were crossed, and her face had that tight look people get when they have been holding something in all day. You brought him here on purpose, didn't you? She said. It was not really a question. This is some kind of point you are trying to make. I looked at her, let her stand there with her accusation hanging in the air, and then I said, Sloan, I am just being a decent human being. That is what people who live here do, right? Her mouth opened, then it closed. I watched it happen in real time, the moment where she heard her own logic coming back at her, and realized she had no way to argue against it without arguing against herself. She did not say anything else. She just turned and went back to the guest room and closed the door, and I heard the lock click behind her. That was the first time Sloan had nothing to say, and honestly it felt better than any argument I could have won. I went to bed that night thinking maybe things were finally shifting, but right as I was about to fall asleep, I heard Mark's voice through the bedroom door. Low, careful, the kind of quiet you use when you do not want anyone else in the house to hear you. I got out of bed and stood by the door, not breathing, just listening. He was on the phone with someone. I could not tell who. She is trying to humiliate me, he said. She moved her ex in just to prove a point, and now I look like an idiot in my own house. I stood there in the dark hallway with my hand on the doorframe, and felt something click into place inside my chest. Not anger, not sadness, just this clean, clear understanding that had been building for weeks and finally locked in. He knew. He had always known. He knew that having Sloan here was not just helping a friend. He knew exactly why it made me uncomfortable, because he was feeling that same discomfort right now, and it was eating him alive. He just never thought I would make him feel it. He thought I would keep swallowing it, keep being the bigger person, keep going to bed alone while he and his ex laughed on my couch under my blanket. And now that I had done something, he was not rethinking his choices. He was calling someone to complain that I had the nerve to treat him the way he treated me. The next morning, Mark tried a new strategy. He walked into the kitchen while Danny was eating breakfast, and instead of the cold stare, he smiled. This wide, forced, overly warm grin that looked like he had practiced it in the bathroom mirror. Hey bro, he said, clapping Danny on the shoulder. You mentioned that job interview, right? Let me give you a ride. Over the next few days, he bought Danny a six-pack, asked about his fantasy football lineup, called him bro, so many times it stopped sounding like a word, offered to help update his resume. Danny, because Danny was Danny, just thought Mark had finally warmed up to him. I held back because I needed to see how far Mark would take it. It worked faster than I expected. I came home from work on a Thursday and found Danny in the kitchen looking confused. Hey, so Mark and I had a talk. He said you have been really stressed lately, and that maybe me being here is adding pressure. He said it might be better for you if I cleared out soon. I do not want to make your life harder. Mark had gone behind my back, sat Danny down like a concerned husband worried about his poor stressed wife, and framed sending Danny away as an act of kindness toward me. Like this was about my well-being, and not about the fact that Mark could not stand having another man on his couch for the exact same reason I could not stand having Sloan on mine. I took a breath, then I told Danny the truth. Mark did not say that because he is worried about me. He said that because he does not like having you here for the exact same reason I did not like having Sloan here. And when I told him that, he called me insecure. Danny stood there turning it over in his head. Then he nodded once and said, so he is fine dishing it out but not taking it. That was the entire thing. The whole mess, boiled down to one sentence by a guy who ate cereal for every meal and could not name the current president if you spotted him the first 3 letters. But he got it. He understood in 10 seconds what Mark had been refusing to understand for over a month. Danny pushed off the counter and looked at me with more seriousness than I had ever seen from him. You gave me a couch when I had nowhere to go. I am not going to let your husband guilt me into leaving just because he got uncomfortable. That is his problem, not yours. It caught me off guard in a way I was not ready for, and I had to turn away and pretend I was looking for something in the cabinet so he would not see my face. Once Mark realized his plan had not worked, the warmth disappeared overnight. He stopped talking to Danny completely, but he also stopped talking to me. Dinner became silent. When I walked into a room, he would find a reason to leave it. Not fast, not obvious, just a slow drift toward the door like he had suddenly remembered something he needed to do somewhere else. It was not anger exactly, it was punishment. He was making the house as cold and uncomfortable as possible so that I would be the one to break first, come to him with an apology, and then everything would go back to the way it was when Mark made all the rules, and I followed them quietly. 3 days of that. 3 full days of Mark treating me like I was invisible in my own house, and by the 3rd morning I was sitting on the edge of the bed before my alarm even went off, running through every decision I had made since Danny moved in, and picking each one apart like it was evidence against me. Maybe I should not have done it. Maybe there was a better way. That voice kept looping, and it kept sounding like him. So I finally called Oswald, my best friend since way before Mark was in the picture. Oswald had this way of listening where he would not say a single word until you were completely done talking. So I told him everything, from Sloan showing up with the duffel bag, to Mark calling me insecure, to the blanket and the movies and the canceled dinner, to Danny, to the tiny mug, to Mark trying to charm him out of the house behind my back. Oswald listened to all of it without interrupting once. When I was done, he said, let me get this straight. He moved his ex in without asking. He told you that you were insecure for being uncomfortable. He canceled your date nights to hang out with her. And now that you did the exact same thing, he is giving you the silent treatment because it is different when it happens to him? Yes, I said. He is banking on you feeling guilty first, so he never has to apologize. Oswald said. That is what he has been doing this whole time. Do not fold now. Somewhere in that quiet, I felt the ground come back under my feet. The silence was just a bigger version of the same move. Make me feel guilty enough and I would apologize first, and then he would never have to look at what he did. I tried one more time to have a real conversation. I waited until a Saturday afternoon when Sloan was out looking looking at apartments, and Danny had gone to meet a friend. The house was quiet for the first time in weeks. Mark was in the living room scrolling his phone. I walked in, sat down across from him, and said, "Can we talk? Not argue. Talk." He put his phone down and sat there. "I do not want to fight," I said. When Sloane moved in without anyone asking me, I felt like I did not matter in my own home. When you chose her company over mine night after night, I felt like I was losing you. I brought Danny here because I ran out of ways to explain how that felt. I needed you to feel it too. The silence stretched out, and I let it. Then he looked up and said, "I hear you." Something in my chest loosened. Then he kept talking. "But you went about it the wrong way. You should have just talked to me instead of playing games." The relief stopped. "I did talk to you," I said. "Multiple times. You told me I was insecure. You told me I was making it about myself. You told me to be a decent human being. I talked to you every single time, Mark. You just were not listening." His face got tight around the jaw, the way it always did when he knew he was losing and did not want to admit it. "Okay, maybe I did not handle it perfectly, but what you did with Danny was manipulative. And what Sloane was doing in our house for over a month," I said, "is that not manipulative? Wearing your clothes, taking over our nights, calling our things hers. You did not see any of that as a problem until someone did it to you. He had nothing for that." He stood up, picked up his keys, and said, "I think we need some space. I am going to stay at my buddy's place for a couple of nights." He walked to the front door without looking back. I heard it open. I heard it close. I heard his car start in the driveway and pull away. Sloane was still on my couch. His ex was still in my house. He could not handle Danny, but he expected me to keep living with her while he went off to cool down and figure out how to spin this into something that was not his fault. I sat at that kitchen table for a long time. My hands were flat on the surface like I was holding myself in place. I had come into that conversation ready to meet him halfway. I had stripped away every bit of anger and sarcasm and strategy and just told him, plain and simple, what I felt and why I did what I did. And the second he ran out of ways to turn it back on me, the second he could not find a deflection or a redirect, he left. He grabbed his keys and walked out the door like leaving was easier than sitting across from his wife and saying the words I was wrong. And the worst part was that Sloane was still on my couch. His ex was still in my house. I came home from work the second evening and found Sloane sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine in front of her, waiting. "He called me this morning," she said. "He asked if I would talk to you. Try to smooth things over. So he sent you to clean up his mess," I said. Again, Sloane flinched. Then she said something I was not ready for. "He told me what you said about how I made you feel. I did not think I was doing that. I thought we were all just getting along." I did not hold back. "Sloane, you reorganized my kitchen. You wore his clothes. You took over our evenings. You told me you knew him before I did, like that was supposed to put me in my place. In what world is that just getting along?" She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I think I liked being close to him again. Not in a romantic way. In a way where I felt like I mattered to someone. My life fell apart, and he was the one person who made me feel like I still had a place. I did not think about what that was costing you. I should have." It was the most honest thing she had said since the day she showed up with that duffel bag. I did not forgive her right there, but I could see that she meant it. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "But you need to find your own place. This was never supposed to be permanent, and staying here is not good for any of us." Sloane nodded. "I know. I found a sublease that starts next week." That night, Mark came home. He sat down next to me on the couch, not too close, leaving space like he was not sure he had earned the right to be near me yet. "Sloane told me what you two talked about," he said. I waited. He took a breath, the kind that comes from somewhere deep, and said, "I knew it was not okay. I knew from the first night. I liked having her here because she made me feel like the version of myself I was before all the boring adult stuff. And I told myself you were the problem for not being cool with it, because that was easier than admitting I was the one being selfish." My eyes burned. "That is all I needed to hear," I said. "Not that you were wrong. That you knew and you chose to make me feel crazy anyway." He did not reach for a deflection or a redirect. He just said, "I am sorry. I mean it. I do not know how to fix it, but I am sorry." I looked at him and said, "Fixing it starts with meaning what you say, and not just when you have been backed into a corner. Because I should not have had to move my ex onto our couch for you to see me standing right in front of you." He held my gaze and he did not flinch. Danny wandered in from the kitchen right then, drying his hands on a dish towel, looked at the two of us and said, "So, should I start packing too? Or—" I almost laughed. A real one this time. I told him his buddy from work had offered him a room last week. Danny grinned that easy, unbothered grin and said, "Yeah, I was kind of waiting for someone to kick me out. This couch is terrible for my back anyway." He shook Mark's hand on his way to grab his bag. No hard feelings, no drama, no big speech. Just a guy who showed up when I needed him, did what was asked, and left when it was done. Sloane moved out by the end of the week. She sent me a text a few days later that said, "Your coffee maker is fine, by the way. I was just being territorial. Sorry about that too." I read it, shook my head, and did not respond. Some apologies you accept by just letting them exist. Mark and I started over with a rule. No major decisions about our home without both of us in the room. It was simple. It should have always been the rule. Mark still sometimes reaches for a deflection when things get uncomfortable, but now he catches himself. Not every time, but enough. A Tuesday night, a couple weeks later, I sat on my couch alone. My coffee made exactly the way I like it. Every throw pillow exactly where I put it. The house was quiet. It was mine again. I picked up my phone and saw a text from Danny. A photo of his new room with a pillow propped up on a real bed. "Upgrade," he wrote. I smiled. Then I put the phone down, pulled the blanket over my legs, and picked the movie myself.